Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Studio Art. I'm your instructor, Mr. Schwartz, and in today's lesson, we're going to take all the skills that you learned about figure drawing from the previous lesson, and we're going to apply it to a composition of a fight scene. This video will show you all of the different steps that you need to take in order to create your composition and your fight scene in the most effective way. So let's take a look at what some of these things are. Okay, so here are the steps. Whoa, went too far. So here are the steps to your drawing your fight scene. There are essentially four main steps or four main components that I'm gonna ask you to use. The first two are all about planning your composition, all right? So I'm gonna take myself out of this video since the virtual background is not really working too well. But let's stay on track here. So step one is thumbnail sketches and gesture drawings. Now we learned what gesture drawings were on the previous lesson. They're small, quick sketches that describe the angle and pose of the figure that you're drawing. But thumbnail sketches are a scene or a composition that you're drawing. And these are the same kind of things as a gesture drawing. They're brainstorming sketches. They're meant to be quick and loose and fast, and the detail that they have are also loose if there's any detail at all. So this tells the most amount of information in the quickest and simplest way possible. So thumbnail sketches are quick sketches made inside a rectangle, and this captures the scale, placement, and action of the scene. Thumbnail sketches are typically contour line drawings with no shadow and little detail. These are your brainstorming sketches. Usually several are done on a single page before an artist finds one that they like best. So as I said, these are your brainstorming sketches. So you may want to do several before you hit upon that composition where you're like, aha, that's what we want. Step two is applying a method called the rule of thirds. And this is going to be a grid. Now, this is all about the placement of your composition. And when you have a space, it can be divided up in different ways, and you can place the things in your composition, such as figures and buildings or whatever, in different ways. One option is to place your central action or your action right in the center, okay? Your horizon line is in the center, your main figure is right in the center. But according to photographers, designers, and filmmakers of all stripes, the time-tested way of creating a far more interesting composition is to use the rule of thirds grid. So this is all about creating an interesting composition, not just a composition, but one that will maximize the emphasis of what you want to be in your drawing. Okay, so the rule of thirds is a method designers, photographers, and filmmakers use to create more interesting and dynamic compositions. A space, usually a rectangle, is divided into a grid of 9 sections by making 3 equally spaced horizontal and vertical lines. 3 equally spaced vertical lines, 3 equally spaced horizontal lines. When you're doing this, you don't need to include all of the lines, but some of them, and we'll take a look at that. All right, so when you're placing your figures and objects in your composition, they should be placed on at least one or more of the lines or intersections of the grid. So let's just say we have the first vertical line, the first of the third. If you place something there instead of right dab in the center, it creates a more interesting composition than if you were to place it in the center, because there's a little more room on the side of it. Likewise with your horizon line, the way that your horizon, which separates the sky from the land, should be, it should either take up 2/3 of your composition from the bottom or 2/3 of your composition from the top, meaning that 2/3 of it should either be sky or 2/3 of it should be land, all right? So that, in terms of placing your figures, will create a more interesting composition. So this rule of thirds is both for placing your horizon line and figuring out where the land and sky is, but also where you're placing your figures and other areas of interest in your composition. So these here are, okay, I'm gonna show you examples of thumbnail sketches and rules of thirds, but before that, this is just a reminder of all of the different parts of a gesture drawing and the way to go about it. So make sure that you go back and if you haven't really got it solid from the previous lesson, here it is right here. You can go back and review all of these different steps. But I'm gonna move on because I covered this in the last lesson. Okay, so here are your thumbnail sketches. You'll notice that they take place inside a rectangle, that there's action scenes going on, but they also show space and distance. And the way that they do that is what is closest to the viewer, let's just take this third one, is larger, okay, because it's in the foreground and it's closer to the viewer than the second figure, which is smaller and more diminished because it is further away from the viewer. So this applies the basic rules of perspective to create depth and distance in your composition. Also, I want to show you that the rule of thirds here, about where this figure is placed, is about 1/3 in. All right, this figure is placed in the center, and that's fine. I'm not saying you can't place things in the center. You can, but when you place something else in 1/3 of the composition, it creates a more interesting dynamic. So take a look, and you can break these down into where the thirds and where the grids might be. If we were to divide this into thirds horizontally, you might find other similarities. This over here is the grid that we're talking about. It's 9 sections. It's we said that it's 3 horizontal lines, but it's really 2. Okay, it's the first third, the second third. So there's 3 equal sections, but 2 vertical lines. 3 equal sections, but 2 horizontal lines. Okay, so I hope this clears this up here. Now let's take a look at where these points of emphasis are. They're at the intersections between where the horizontal and vertical lines meet, which are illustrated with these circles here. All right, so we could see here that this figure is placed on the second rule of third here in this grid. So it's hitting both this intersection, and this line here, leaving, and also the horizon line only takes up 2/3 from the bottom, all right, which is one of the options, leaving 1/3 for the sky. The second option that the designer could have taken is to have 1/3 land and 2/3 sky. So those are your 2 options when placing the horizon line. I included this scene here because this figure is along a line of third. This figure is along a line of third. And if we were to draw it horizontally, it would be about where the hand and wrist is and about where this, the waist is. And if we were to draw our top horizontal line, it would be about where the bottom of the elbow and the shoulder meet. So even the figures themselves are still lined up with the horizontal lines as well as the vertical. Again, you don't need to hit all of these access lines, but you can choose. Here are different examples illustrated by the red line of how these figures are placed in the objects, such as the moon. Not all of the lines are drawn. There's one of the third lines, both vertically and horizontally here, and in here. So the artist isn't using all of them, but 2 of them, 1 vertical, 1 horizontal. So it's up to you how many of these lines you can use. This bottom one shows how the viewer goes about moving around a page and what they see first. So this can give you some information about where to place things to be most effective to the viewer's eye. Us being from the Western civilization, we tend to read things from left to right. So we're going to enter into our composition from the left side and hit this first access point before moving elsewhere in the composition. Okay, so this is about the placement and planning. This is all about planning the action and all that, but also applying a compositional method to make it more interesting. Moving on, the second half of your the steps is refining and adding detail, shadow, and location. The third step is an improvised sketch. Once you've come up with a couple different thumbnail sketches, you're going to choose one and do a larger, more detailed version of it, okay? It doesn't have to have all of the detail of the final drawing, not at all. It could still be loose, it could still have minimal detail and shadows, but it should have some shadows and some detail. They can just merely be suggested loosely instead of, you know, taking a lot of time refining it. That's not what the improvised sketch is. Remember that it's still a sketch, it's just a, one that is improvised from a thumbnail. So it's just taken to the next level. So the improvised sketch is the in-between step between the thumbnail and the final drawing. The final drawing is where you're going to pull out all the stops, okay? So once you've worked out a lot of your information on the improvised sketch, you're going to take that information and on a separate page, you're going to do your final drawing. There should be no construction lines visible. These are the lines used to build your drawing, no gesture drawings, none of that. That should all be gone, all right? Your shading is correct and makes sense. It's from a light source, all right? So I want you to take the lessons that we learned from shading, and when you add shadows, because you might be drawing this from your imagination, just make sure, commit to a light source. If it's all coming from the left side or the right side, everything should apply. You should have detail and refinement. This should be the very best version of your drawing. From your thumbnail leading up to it, this should be all your skills on display. So make sure that there's refinement and all the detail that you want is included and present. It should be inked because this is a final drawing. It should be colored neatly, all of this neatly, and it needs to contain, and the improvised sketch can also have this very loosely, and should have this actually. It should contain at least one element that places it in a location or a scene. We don't want our fight scene taking place in space. It should have a horizon line that shows where the ground is and where the sky is. That's a minimum. Then we need to have on top of that one element. It doesn't have to be a city. It doesn't have to be a complete drawing. It could just be something that places it in somewhere on planet Earth or on another planet. It doesn't need to be planet Earth, but it needs to be someplace, okay? And not just in an open air, okay? So I believe that is all of your assignments. Let's see if there's any more. Here are your materials. I always suggest a variety of hard and soft pencils in addition to the light blue pencils. And when you use light pencils, which is the hard lead, the H pencils, or a light blue pencil, you're adding another layer to work and to build the your figure off of, because it's lighter, and you can take the softer lead and the darker lead to build off of that. So when you use light colored leads and light colored pencils, you're giving yourself more of a safety net to sketch and to build and not commit to dark lines until you've really placed everything, okay? Ink, which will be used on the final drawing, eraser to get rid of construction and gesture drawing lines, and color, all right? All right, okay, so your assignment one, you're going to watch these 3 videos, all right? These 3 videos that are attached to the assignment will show you different things, okay, that are related to this lesson. How to draw dynamic figures will show you the basics of constructing a figure drawing. How to draw fight scenes will show you how to place figures in your composition using the rule of thirds method. And the third video, 9 ways to draw fight scenes, will show you how to make different thumbnail sketches in order to figure out which is the best composition to go with. So in order, I would watch 9 ways to draw first, and then I would show, and then watch how to draw fight scenes second, and how to draw dynamic figures third, okay? Or it doesn't matter. They'll all give you essential information. These videos will be attached to your Google Classroom assignment. And okay, and your first one will just be doing 3 thumbnail sketches of your fight scene and 1 improvised drawing. These can be all on the same page. So assignment 1, okay, will be watching the videos, doing a minimum of 3 thumbnail sketches, using the rule of thirds, and doing 1 improvised drawing where you choose one of your thumbnail sketches. This could all be on the same page. So that's assignment 1. Assignment 2 is your final drawing. Okay, assignment 1, your planning stage, your thumbnails, your gesture, your rule of thirds, your composition, your improvised drawing. Assignment 2 is that final drawing. And all of the different criteria is here. I already went over all of that, okay? So this is really just sort of driving home what I've already went over. Assignment 1, minimum of 3 thumbnail sketches using the rule of thirds to place your figures and build your compositions, and a larger improvised sketch of one of your thumbnails all on the same page. Assignment 2, a final drawing on a separate page that follows all the criteria listed in the assignment. Okay, folks, so it's all there, all the assignments, all the information, all the resources. It's in this video, but it's also attached on your Google Classroom assignment. If you have any follow-up questions, please be feel to reach out to me at office hours through the Google Stream or through Google Classroom. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, do take care.